this episode, we rebuild the pilot house furniture. We do a lesson on how to do basic soldering on a boat to make some cool custom-made lights. And I point at things in the Natural History and the Science Museums in London.
I'm Andy.
I'm Melissa.
And I'm Jack.
And together we've spent the last year restoring our steel sailing yacht.
We started off with a little 24-foot coastal cruiser called Aeolus.
Then we moved up to a 28-foot long keel called Miss Rosie.
But because she was too small for a family to live on, we took on the huge task of restoring a 38-foot steel cutter-rigged pilot house yacht with a lifting keel.
Over the last year we've done most big metal work and welding.
Most of the painting.
And over this winter we're working on whatever jobs we can fit around the terrible weather here in North Wales.
Once she's ready to float, we will be preparing her for blue water and living aboard, and we'll be setting off to sail around the world as a family.
Come along with us on this epic journey. Amazingly, Dad does actually do some work without waffling about it for ages. But don't worry, there's a good bit of Dad waffling later on in the episode.
Wanted to show you the reality of boat life on a project boat. We're having a quick break and then tidying up and having dinner, but this is what it looks like currently, and I've already started tidying up. We've got dinner cooking in the corner. Yeah, so we've got to tidy this up enough for us to sleep in here tonight. But it's all good and we wouldn't have it any other way.
Now though, I want to show you the amazing trip I had to the Natural History and Science Museum as a part of my schoolwork. We had a whistle-stop tour of the south of England to collect some bits and pieces we had bought from eBay. The entrance of the museum is so cool, and the escalator going into the earth. I love to study history and nature and space and animals, and pretty much everything now, I come to think of it. So it was amazing to see some of the incredible discoveries made up past, present and future of our planet, and see how scientists have actually worked this stuff out. We looked at the weather systems on our planet and other planets in our solar system. Some of the displays are really clever, the way they've been designed. The fossils of ancient creatures were so interesting, and it got me thinking about how we as humans are impacting our environment and could actually be the cause of some species going extinct. This is Mary Anning. She was an incredible young woman who discovered some of the most important fossils ever. The blue whale was amazing in the main hall. And the T-Rex had a brilliant Christmas jumper. After the Natural History Museum, we went more or less next door to the Science Museum, and I learnt so many interesting things about how we managed to fly into space and then to the moon. It was also really cool to see all the displays of technology going through the ages, from musical instruments to splendid carriages to awesome speedboats. But now it's back to the boat to hear Dad waffle a bit. This is actually quite an interesting tutorial about how to solder on a boat.
I'm going to do a very quick tutorial on soldering for sailors and liveaboards because it's something we all have to do. A lot of us are now using this LED strip lamp stuff, which I'm going to be using for the red navigation lights and for stuff under cupboards and things like that. You've seen we've already got the LED downlighters, but I'm going to be making some pretty cool LED red and white lights for navigation. And I'm going to be using this stuff. You can get it either on paper backed, which isn't really waterproof, but it's okay if it's in an enclosure, and you can get the kind of rubbery covered stuff where you have to peel off, cut away some of the rubber. But what I wanted to talk to you about was soldering and how to go about soldering these, because there's some, I'm no expert in this, but it's a kind of tutorial because I've been soldering for a long time on quadcopters, building custom drones and doing a lot of sort of microelectronics at home. So I just thought maybe I've got a few tips that some of you might find useful. The first thing is what soldering iron you're using. Now I'm using a TS100, which is, it's tiny. They're about 70 quid. You can get them on Amazon, and it's a digitally controlled soldering iron. The ones that you get from the hardware store and haven't got a temperature control, and they're just a coil, so they get hot and maybe they stay hot and maybe they don't. These are brilliant. They plug into any, I've made up a little patch lead there to run it off a LiPo. You can run it off your leisure batteries. You can run it off anything from, I think, 5 to 48 volts. They heat up really quickly, and you can press the button and you can select what temperature you want. So I'm going to set this for 350 degrees, which I think is going to be plenty for what we need. If you're good at soldering and you've been soldering a while, then you can run higher temperatures, which means that you can get in, solder and get out quickly, but I would recommend if you don't go quite so hot if you're new to it, because you can actually lift the pads on the board. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to tin these pads, really critical. And what I'm going to do that, I'm going to apply a little bit of flux. Let's choose that one actually. That's a little bit of flux. And flux is your friend. It helps the metal oxidize slightly differently. Won't go into the science of that now because it's boring. But we'll put some flux on here, and you'll see as the flux burns off, it smokes. And once the smoke stops, the flux is gone, and you're going to have trouble. The solder I'm using is 6337 flux cord, so there is a little bit of flux down the middle of this. It's like a hollow tube, and it's got some flux down the centre. I'm just going to take the end off that. And then the other piece of equipment, I would say, so solder wise 6337, don't use the stuff from the hardware store, it's just plumbers soldering, it doesn't have any flux in. A little brass sponge. Some people use a wet sponge, I don't, that's up to you, but that really keeps your soldering tip really nice and clean. For whatever you do, never use sandpaper on a soldering tip, you'll ruin it, because it's actually a very thin coating of nickel, I think, on the end of the tip, and as soon as you touch it with sandpaper, it's ruined. If your soldering iron tip goes black and won't hold solder, bin it, it's no good, you can't recondition it. So let's just heat up the pad and let the solder flow into the pad. You're not putting a blob of solder on the end of the soldering iron and dabbing it onto the pad. You're heating up the pad and introducing the solder until the pad melts the solder. So now you can see that looked really super quick. I've got 2 tiny little blobs of solder on the pads. It's as quick as that. But if you try and transfer it from the tip to the pad, you're going to get nowhere. In terms of wire strippers, these ones were given to me by Tom the Legend. Let's go on. And they're brilliant. My personal preferred technique is to use my teeth, but I'm on YouTube, so I'm not going to do that. So you've got the end of your wire stripped, you're going to give it a little twist. You don't want to flatten that out. Put your solder up like this, and again, you're not soldering, you're not collecting solder on the end of the tip and pushing it into the wire. You're flowing the solder in using a capillary action, and the wire will suck up the solder. There we go, that's nicely tinned. And the same the other end. Doesn't take long. On the soldering iron front, by the way, I know a lot of people like the gas ones. I hate them. They're fine for big stuff outdoors where you've got a lot of heat being blown away and you're doing plumbing fittings and what have you. They're just awful for electronics. I wouldn't even consider using a gas soldering iron for anything small like your LED lights on your boat. These TS100s are the business. And of course I have also got the kind of plug-in mains ones, which are, you know, by Hayco and Weller. I've got those at home, but on a boat these are great, you can run them off everything. So here we go, I've got my wire now, and what I want to do, it's tinned already, but I'm going to cut it down to the length of the pad. So I'm going to offer it up, and that now is over with the insulation up to the end of the pad. It's actually overhanging the end of the solder pad, so I'm going to cut it right down. It's tiny. Same business. I'm not pushing down on the wire to force it into the solder. That will splay the wire out and it will ruin it. I'm just, I don't know if you can see this really well on camera, but I'm melting the solder, introducing the wire into the pool and letting the two fuse together. And to check that that solder is okay, I've got one of these because I'm a little bit long-sighted. Again, you can buy a set of these, but they're really handy to do it. Now, these LED strips are 12 volts, which means that they run on 12 volts clearly, but we don't know how voltage resistant they are. If your alternator is charging your leisure batteries, there's a chance that you can be putting 14 or even 15 volts into the batteries, which could fry these. It could, unlikely, but it could. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a little regulator. There's loads that you can buy. There's these tiny little jobbies here where you've got 12 volts in and you short the pins and select the voltage out. I've got loads of these, which are power distribution boards from quadcopters. They're dirt cheap if you buy the aftermarket ones, and you can put 12 volts in, and you can put anything up to 22 volts in, and then you've got lots of 12 volt out and 5 volt out pads all on the board. So I'm going to go ahead and tin all of these pins here. Okay, so let me just unplug that, save the battery. What we've now got is our LED strip soldered to a 12 volt regulator so we don't blow anything if the alternator does put in more volts than the LEDs could cope with. I'm not going to go any further today. So that's how I would go about soldering on a boat, not in the workshop. TS100 soldering iron, 6337 solder, brass sponge, flux, a little eyepiece so you can see what you're doing, and it'll make life an awful lot easier for you when you come to do these little soldering jobs. They'll look neater, they'll look nice and shiny, and they'll be nice and strong, and you won't have to worry about them. Hopefully that was helpful to some of you.
Right, if you managed to put up with Dad's waffle, well done. Now it's back into the pilot house for more furniture making and seeing how we're going to put all that tech soldering stuff into action.
Nice.
We think that's where the freezer's going to go. Thinking that we've got some deep storage in the bilge down there, so we're thinking of putting the compressor pump down low, below the waterline, and then this whole bench would be the freezer compartment. Not decided yet, but I think that's probably what we're going to do. Clad all of that properly and insulate it and turn it into a freezer. So our Shoreline connector, we've got a 240 volt ring main in the boat, but the Shoreline connector, we've currently got no way of plugging it in outside, so we've just run the extension through the hatch, which has been fine. But now that we've built these benches, we've got to install the Shoreline connector, and Ben at Pro Marine Store, they're an online chandlers, he's a great guy, wealth of knowledge, he got us this at an amazing price, and it's a lovely Victron stainless steel Shoreline connector. So I'm going to have a look at where we're going to fit that outside and pop it in so that we can finish up this this unit here and tidy up that cabling. Yummy, yummy.
It's got to that time of the day again where it's almost the end of the day, and just this once again is the reality of boat life. Andy is making a cup of tea in the tiniest space available. We have mess everywhere.
It's like an inch of sawdust on the floor.
Yeah. And we're going to tidy up and cook dinner.
And I've still got to do some soldering.
Yeah, but it's all fun and games.
Yeah.
But we're just, yeah, we're the kind of people that quite often tidy up and stuff before we film, and the power's just gone off. I just want to show you something that I'm very excited about. Have a look at this. These will be hinged, but look at the storage under here. I've managed to fit 4 big black boxes that we keep all our tools in, and there's still loads of space. It's very exciting. Believe it or not, I am actually tidying up.
So basically these are going to go up here. We've got 3 of these wooden rings. We're going to have one here and one in the middle. And if you can hold that there, Melissa. Obviously they'll be recessed and there'll be switches on them as I was demonstrating earlier. But you've got one which will turn on the red light for navigation, and the other one turns on the white light just for daytime light. And they've got frosted perspex, so it's like wooden, custom built LED, super bright, low amp draw, down and navigation and down lights.
Yep.
That'll be alright.
They'll be installed next week.
Yeah, they'll be installed next week. Got lots of exciting stuff next week.
Thanks so much for watching.
Remember, you can follow our Instagram and Facebook pages for news and updates.
You can support us on Patreon and Coffee.
And you can get our new Sailing Melody shirts and merchandise by clicking the pictures under the video or clicking the links in the video description.
And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell and give the video a thumbs up. We will see you very soon. Andy,
Melissa.
And Captain Jack.